My mother never just wanted to be loved, she wanted to be worshipped. And every time someone loved me, she made sure to steal that love for herself. She flirted with my boyfriends, ruined every relationship I had, and made me believe I was unlovable. But the day I introduced her to my gay best friend was the day her game finally turned against her. It all started the summer I turned 16, the first time I realized my mother wasn't just difficult, she was competing with me. Most girls talk about borrowing their mom's makeup or arguing over curfews. I was arguing with mine about why she wore red lipstick and a silk robe when my boyfriend came over. She'd smile that tight-lipped smile and say, "Oh, sweetheart, don't be so insecure. I'm just being friendly." But friendly didn't explain why she laughed too loud, leaned too close, or why every boy who once liked me suddenly stopped calling after meeting her. Welcome to Raw Reddit Tales. Subscribe to keep getting the spiciest stories. From the outside, my mother was the picture of charm. Beautiful, magnetic, effortlessly social. People adored her. But behind closed doors, she was the kind of woman who needed every light in the room pointed her way. She'd talk over me, correct me in front of others, and sigh dramatically whenever I dared to share my own opinion. Her favorite phrase? "You think you're better than me now?" I used to brush it off as mother-daughter tension. But as I got older, her jealousy grew teeth. She'd make cutting remarks about my looks. "Those blue eyes of yours are the only thing your father left that's worth keeping." Or ask invasive questions about my love life just to weaponize the answers later. Every time I brought someone home, it was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. The way she touched their arm, the giggle that didn't belong to a mother, it was suffocating. I lost more relationships to her than I could count. By the time I turned 21, I realized she wasn't trying to protect me. She was trying to erase me. So I made a plan, one that would finally expose who she really was. When my dad died, something in my mother snapped. Or maybe it finally got set free. He'd been her mirror, her audience, her proof that she still had power. The day they buried him, she cried like a widow in a movie, clutching his photo until the last shovel of dirt hit the coffin. But by the next month, she dyed her hair platinum blonde, started wearing low-cut dresses, and began hanging out at the gym I used to go to after class. Not for grief therapy, for attention. From boys my age. She called it reclaiming her youth, but it looked more like desperation. She flirted with trainers, college kids, even one of my ex's friends. It was mortifying. I remember walking in one evening to find her on the couch, drinking wine with a boy who couldn't have been older than 19. When I froze in the doorway, she just smirked and said, "Don't look so shocked, darling. I'm not dead yet." That was the night I stopped seeing her as my mother and started seeing her as competition. From then on, she treated me like a rival. If I wore jeans, she wore tighter ones. If I posted a picture on Instagram, she'd upload something flashier an hour later with captions like, "Some of us age like wine." The comments always poured in, fire emojis, heart eyes, and she'd soak it up while side-eyeing me across the room. She needed the validation like oxygen, and every like she got felt like one less for me. When I started dating Liam, she crossed a line that burned everything. Liam was quiet, respectful, the kind of guy who brought me flowers for no reason. He met Mom once, and her smile could have melted glass. She called him charming and so handsome. 2 weeks later, he ghosted me completely. When I finally saw his texts, they were from her number. Messages she sent pretending to be me, taunting him, manipulating him until he backed off. I confronted her, and she laughed. If he left that easily, he wasn't worth it. That was the moment I decided to destroy her game. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. Attention, temptation, but on my terms. And that's when Daniel entered the picture. Daniel was the kind of man my mother couldn't resist. Tall, charming, devastatingly attractive, with a disarming smile that made people confess secrets without meaning to. Except for one little detail. Daniel wasn't into women. He was my best friend, my partner in chaos, and the only person who truly understood how twisted my mother could be. When I told him about my plan, he grinned and said, "You want to set her up with a trap? Honey, I was born for this." The plan was simple. Daniel would play the role of my new boyfriend, affectionate, successful, and hopelessly in love with me. I'd introduce him to my mother, and we'd watch her pattern unfold. I wanted her to see herself, to finally realize how far she'd fallen. But deep down, I wanted something darker. I wanted revenge. When the day came, Mom wore her most revealing dress. It wasn't subtle. Emerald green satin that hugged her curves, gold jewelry glinting under the kitchen light. She looked like she was heading to a date, not dinner with her daughter. Daniel played his part perfectly, walking in with a bouquet, kissing my cheek, complimenting her cooking before she even mentioned food. Her eyes lit up like candles. She couldn't help herself. "Oh my," she purred, "I can see why my daughter's glowing lately." Daniel smirked. "She's worth glowing for." It was delicious. Every compliment he gave me, she twisted into competition. When he laughed at my jokes, she interrupted with her own. When he reached for my hand, she adjusted her hair, letting her neckline dip just a little lower. It was textbook. Predictable, pathetic, but painful to watch. Later that night, I caught her texting someone. Curiosity burned through me, and when she left her phone unlocked on the counter, I peeked. She'd messaged Daniel, "You seem mature for your age. Maybe we should talk, privately." My heart dropped, not from shock, but from confirmation. She was exactly who I thought she was. I showed Daniel the message, and he didn't even flinch. "Oh, we're just getting started," he said. "Let's make her think she's winning." And just like that, the trap tightened. The next few weeks were pure theater. Daniel turned the charm up to maximum, feeding her the perfect blend of interest and distance. He'd compliment her taste, listen to her fabricated hardships, and occasionally glance at her the way every man she met eventually did. She was addicted to the attention. You could see it in how she dressed sharper, laughed louder, and suddenly started dropping by my apartment unannounced. Every time she visited, she'd bring some excuse. "Oh, I was just in the neighborhood," or "I thought you might need a home-cooked meal." But her eyes never left Daniel. She'd pour wine, cross her legs, and ask about his career goals with a tone that dripped with suggestion. Daniel would play along just enough to keep her hooked. He'd smile, let the silence linger, then turn to me and kiss my hand, a small reminder of who he belonged to. That contradiction drove her wild. She wanted to prove she could steal him too. It wasn't about love, it was about power. The more she fell into the trap, the more unhinged she became. She'd send me texts like, "Daniel's such a gentleman, so different from those childish boys you date," or "Be careful, sweetheart. Men like that get bored easily." It was her usual way of cutting me down, but this time, I just smiled and saved every message. Then came the night of her birthday dinner, the perfect stage. I made reservations at a fancy restaurant downtown, invited her under the pretense of celebration. Daniel wore a crisp black suit. I wore a dress that my mother had once called too modest, just to remind her that dignity never needed to scream. Halfway through dinner, Mom reached for Daniel's hand while laughing at one of her own stories. "You know," she said, tilting her head, "if I were a few years younger." Daniel leaned in, eyes glinting with mischief. "If you were a few years younger, you'd still be trying too hard." Her face froze, the smile cracking just a little. But before she could recover, the waiter arrived with a small cake, one I'd requested with a message written in icing, "To the best actress alive." Her jaw tightened. I raised my glass and smiled sweetly. "You've earned it, Mom." And that was when the night took a turn none of us expected. Silence at that table was electric. My mother's smile stiffened as her eyes darted from the cake to me, then to Daniel. For the first time, she looked unsure of herself, like she couldn't tell if she was being celebrated or humiliated, but she recovered quickly, plastering on that charming grin. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "some of us were born to entertain." She leaned back, but Daniel wasn't done. He played his part so smoothly it almost scared me. He looked at her, half smiling. "You really are something, Mrs. Collins. You know, not many women your age could pull off what you do." The way he said your age landed like a slap disguised as a compliment. I bit my lip to stop from laughing. She didn't. Her face went pale, then red. She repeated, "You make it sound like I'm ancient." Daniel shrugged innocently. "I just meant confidence like yours is rare." That was it. The crack in her ego finally widened. She spent the rest of dinner taking cheap shots about my clothes, my job, even the way I held my fork. But instead of shrinking, I smiled through all of it. Because I knew what was coming next. 2 days later, Daniel texted her. Just one line. "You said you wanted to talk privately. Let's do that." She replied instantly. Within hours, she was at a coffee shop downtown, wearing a silk blouse and perfume strong enough to announce her from across the street. Daniel had told me where they'd meet, and though I shouldn't have, I went too. I sat in the far corner, behind sunglasses, pretending to scroll my phone. They talked for 15 minutes. She laughed, tossed her hair, touched his wrist. Then Daniel leaned closer and whispered something that made her freeze. I couldn't hear the words, but her face said it all. Disbelief, confusion, then horror. She stood up abruptly, grabbed her purse, and stormed out, almost knocking over a chair. Daniel watched her leave, then texted me one sentence. "She knows." When I met him outside, he was still smiling. "I told her I was gay," he said simply, "and that the whole thing was your idea." That night, my mother didn't call, didn't text, but I could feel the storm brewing. She showed up at my apartment just past midnight, pounding the door so hard the frame rattled. When I opened it, her mascara was smeared, and her lipstick looked like she'd bitten it off. "You humiliated me," she hissed, shoving past me into the living room. "You and that boy!" Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time, she didn't look composed. She looked cornered. I didn't bother pretending. "You humiliated yourself," I said quietly. "You've been doing it for years. I just let you see it this time." She turned on me, eyes blazing. "You think you're better than me because you tricked me? You have no idea what it's like to be invisible in your own home. Your father made me feel like an accessory, and then you, his little clone, came along and everyone adored you. I won't apologize for wanting to feel alive again." Her confession hung heavy in the air. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Said almost, but then she sneered. "You think that boy actually likes you? He pitied you. You'll always be second place, even in your own schemes." I laughed then, not because it was funny, but because I finally saw the truth. Every cruel word, every manipulative stunt, it was all fear. My mother was terrified of being forgotten, and the only way she knew how to exist was by making others smaller. Daniel came out of my room right then, calm as ever. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You should leave," he told her softly. "You've said enough." She glared at him, then at me, her eyes glassy. "You'll regret this," she whispered before slamming the door behind her. For days, she went silent. Then one morning, I woke up to find a video posted on Facebook, a shaky clip of her crying, calling me ungrateful, claiming I'd set her up and ruined her life. Comments poured in, sympathy for her, judgment for me. But instead of breaking down, I did something I'd never done before. I told my side. I posted everything, the screenshots, the messages, the truth. And for once, people saw her mask slip. She hasn't spoken to me since, but I've never felt lighter. The end. Please like and subscribe for more interesting stories like this. What do you think of this story? Please comment below.